All right, welcome to the Gentleman Badass podcast. We have got another special edition for you. We are on WhatsApp with Ireland right now with Paddy Holohan. So, Paddy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Absolute pleasure.
There's the yank in him. There's the yank in him already. Holohan. Holohan.
Holohan, okay.
Well, hooligan is what it is in Gaelic.
Ah, there we go. Okay.
It means proud man.
Does it really?
Yeah.
Nice job.
Interesting. That's great.
I know, it's weird, isn't it?
So, with all of our guests, we kind of like to get into just a background, where you came from, what you were like as a kid, what you were like growing up. So, if you don't mind starting there, give us a little bit of an idea of what you were like as a young person.
So I grew up in a council estate over here, which like Mick beside you there. A council estate over here would be the equivalent of like a housing project, if you must. So, where a lot of the working class people would come from. The one I live in there was Jobstown. I'm still from there. Fortunately, these housing estates, a small number of people can give a large number of really good, wholehearted people kind of a bad name, if you must. So the one I come from, the media, if something bad happens, so here's a mad story. We had a big snowstorm, right? And guys decided to rob a digger and take down the shopping centre, right? True story. You can Google it. But this was probably like the only story that was ever told through this snowstorm. Now, I understand it's a big story, but then all of a sudden you had other stories. You had politicians that were going out and knocking around houses and making sure old people had bread and roads coming together and clearing out the community and getting people to work and fixing cars. But the only thing that you'll get is Jobstown digger. You have people making parades of it in different countries.
There's a video online of a guy taking a commercial, basically Bobcat, actually bigger than Bobcat, and he destroys a shopping centre. Didn't they pull out the ATM with it or something like that?
That's what they were after, and they said that they were after the ATM, and the guys that did it and stuff like that, they don't even live around my area. You know what I'm saying? It's like they come in and give a bad name, and then it's like, yeah, but it happened in Jobstown. But there's a crazy picture that was like some people going on trying to defend it, saying the people were only trying to feed the communities. And there's a picture of this guy running out with a big box of Haribo jellies. Listen, but the place I grew up in, I would never change it. It's like kind of where Mick is from. It's the most genuine people you'll ever see. The best stew you will ever get, the best cups of tea you will ever get, and the best conversation that you will truly get. And you would have mothers, and we call them elves, that would have like pinpoint laser accuracy with slippers, so they would throw a slipper at you and it would hit you between the eyes and knock your brother out as well. So I'm very proud of where I come from. I actually represent that borough now. So so growing up for me it was tough. I grew up in a single parent household. Just me, my older sister, and my mother. I never met my father. Never really bothered me. There was about 20 of us on the same road, and about 3 of us had fathers in our lives. So we were pretty crazy at the time, if you think. So you've got 20 Dubliners that are like wild, no internet, no PlayStations keeping them in, and we just ran in the fields and built go-karts and climbed trees and fought other roads. And we were there's a great film called The War of the Buttons. And if you've never seen it, I know you've definitely seen it.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Have you seen it? The War of the Buttons is who we were. That's what we were like as kids.
Okay.
Yeah, we were wild.
Awesome. So when did you kind of find martial arts and then get into competing in MMA?
I was actually old when I found martial arts. I would have done a lot of like most Irish kids. You play hurling, and hurling's actually more dangerous than MMA. You Gaelic sports, football or soccer as you call it. I played rugby. I played everything. I've done lots of boxing, and growing up when I grew up, fighting was an important tool. You had to know how to fight. Now I didn't know how to fight, but I always had the will to fight. I was a little fucker, if you must.
A little courier.
My book is out on the 25th of October, and there's a story in it. It starts with a story. I won't ruin it on you, but it's an incredible story. And when you read it, you'll say, he mentioned that there was on the podcast, but it starts in a fight. And anyway, but to me, martial arts came out of the blue. I was about 18 years of age, and my girlfriend was pregnant at the time. And I remember deciding that I just wanted to get my life together, that I just couldn't understand how everyone else was happy with where their life was, and that they would have kids, and that they would soldier on in welfare and low paid jobs and stuff. And the idea of my kid came into my head. I was obsessed with making the best life possible for him, and he hadn't even been born yet. So I remember trying to get like my I remember saying healthy mind, healthy body, healthy mind. So I joined a club with a friend of mine named Jim Donnelly. He introduced me to it, which would have been SBG at the time. Now, SBG at the time would have been, I think even in the States, it would have been very, very small. It wouldn't have been as known as much as it is now. I think that the Irish invasion blew up the name of SBG. But at the time, when I was saying to people, I'm about to join an SBG, they thought I probably had a sexual transmitted disease or something. you know? So it wasn't as known as that, but I remember going in and then feeling the first feeling of jiu-jitsu and feeling like, whoa, this is what I've been looking for. I was always into martial arts. Van Damme, Sky One. We used to watch, I can't remember the name, but what was it? The martial arts guy.
Jet Li?
No, I can't remember. Walker, Texas Ranger.
Oh, yeah, Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Walker, Texas Ranger, yeah. So I remember we used to watch that. You see him in his jeans, and he's just so cool. Jackie Chan. I was fascinated with these guys. I was mad at the wrestling as well. And I was wild and Irish. So when I found this, I remember feeling like, I remember John put his weight on me one day, and I was just like, what is that? Because John didn't, to me, martial arts was always the real kind of intimidating black belt guy that was huge and, you know, like, and bowed to sensei and all. It just wasn't like that when I walked in, and that's what I liked about it. It caught me straight away. I fell in love with jiu-jitsu on the first day. I really, coming back through a little roundabout in Rathcoole, just up by Newcastle, I said to one of my friends, I told him and said, Dean, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And I literally had done 2 classes.
It's awesome. So from discovering martial arts then and actually getting into it and falling in love, how soon thereafter did you begin competing?
I think I was in there about 3 weeks. I went into a grappling competition. And like 3 weeks, that's what people say to me, when should I compete? Now! That's what I say. I jumped into a submission grappling competition, no-gi, out in, where was it? It was out the north side somewhere, anyway. But it's mad because some of the guys I grappled that day are still around. And I remember standing up in the guy's guard and like murder choking him, like 2 hands on the neck, like Mike Myers or something like that. I was trying to choke him. The referee's like, "What are you doing? Stop!" And I'm like, "I'm choking him." And the referee's looking over at the officials going, he actually has a point. It was that raw over here. Even the referee was like, technically that is a choke, isn't it? So I got a bronze medal in that competition. And I remember looking down, and it was one of these little shitty GA medals, Mick. You know, the ones with the sticker that wasn't even centre, it was off centre.
Exactly.
You know, it was the terriblest medal ever. But I remember, I still have the medal. It's in my house, and I remember looking at it saying, I'm about to get a martial arts medal. This was so alien to me because all my medals would have been from football and GA and stuff like that. So I was hooked straight away. I remember at the time Tiernan was still in his mother's belly because he was at the fight, but he was like in his mother's belly. She was heavily pregnant. She was like 2 weeks to go. My local Chapelton and all had came to this fight and all. It's mental. You couldn't make this stuff up. And I'm still really good friends with the Chapelton Father Martin, and he remembers this day as well. So the first competition was mental.
What year was this?
Oh Jesus, Mick! I couldn't tell you. It would have been 2007. It would have been.
Okay.
Probably before 2006, probably because my son was born then in 2007.
Well, we just had Owen Roddy on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I told Josh, I said, hey, if you want to find out about the mindset of Paddy and Owen Roddy, I said, I'm going to take you back October 18th, 2012, Severe MMA.
Oh, Jesus.
10,000 hours. Do you remember this documentary?
Yeah. That was probably the first of its kind. Like, we were doing stuff like that over here and promoting MMA. And not only that, but promoting what we were doing at SBG and the gym and the team and everything. And this was like a first of its kind of like embedded. And fair play to the Severe MMA guys, because they did that all off their own back and their own budget and everything. And they were just fans of the sport. And they probably didn't get what they were the first ones there, then with P.T. Carroll. And they probably didn't get the props after that they should have. You know, they done a lot of stuff. They've worked on with Connor on a lot of films and stuff like that and all. But yeah, they were the originals there. And yeah, that was a crazy little video shoot. And then watching it back, I remember being like how crazy this is! Like, I'm famous.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Well, you and Owen like look so young back then, but you said something in there that if you spend 10,000 hours doing something, you'll get good at it. And
Yes.
and I always remember that line kind of sticking out, and I was like, yeah, that's this guy's mindset. Like, he's just gonna figure it out. He'll just keep doing it till he figures it out. And now the guys from Severe actually have gone on now to like work with the UFC, and like it's kind of blown up for them, hasn't it? Like, isn't it their full-time gig now?
No. Yeah, no, they've done all right out of it. But as I said, they should be, to me, like, they should be probably the leading journalists in Europe at the moment, you know. And you would see, no, not saying that they haven't done well, Mick. They have done well, but that documentary didn't get as much kind of props as it probably should have for its time. You know, that was well before its time. That was going behind the fighters, kind of the character, well before anybody ever cared about that. And to me, them things had huge consequences with people seeing it. You know, people, the Irish public realising that, hold on, these guys aren't mental barbarians in a way. You know,
Right, 100%.
Yeah, and there was a couple things in there. I actually just watched it for the first time last night. There was one thing that she said, you know, kind of mess around and find something that you're interested, and then when you realize that you love it, just do it for the rest of your life, and that's how you're going to be happy. That really resonated with me. The other thing was watching your fight, which was many years ago at this point, but you know, your opponent going for that leg lock, and those leg locks were pretty deep at least from what I was watching. They were pretty deep, and you were kind of commentating afterwards, and you said, you know, when you escaped that leg lock, you realized that the guy didn't really want to have a scrap. And I thought that was great, how, you know, sometimes it's just that little, you have to push past that edge to find someone's breaking point.
absolutely. If you must have done some fighting and training, Josh, because you sound like you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Was he trained, Mick?
Yeah, he's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu.
David, so you definitely know what you're talking about. Absolutely. So you're 100% in what you're saying there. To me, when you're going to fight someone, you have to make the decision that you're either going to wake up in the dressing room or you're going to leave there in a stretcher. I don't take this. Like, when I was fighting, I wasn't fighting for fame or anything like that. I was fighting for like something deep down inside me, something that's in my blood, in my DNA. I needed to get it out of me. I needed to exercise demons. I needed someone to sign up to let me hit them as hard as they wanted, and I let them hit me as hard as they wanted. You know, in that way. And that was kind of my aspect on that. And then the 10,000 hours thing was that comes from childhood. That comes from as a kid, I probably never won a fight, but I was in them daily. You know, it was very hard. It was very hard to win a fight. A lot of guys were older than me, and I win one or two, and they're in the book as well. And it's pretty cool because in one of the fights in the book, I'm doing a submission on somebody, and I didn't know anything about submissions. And this is in like the middle of a housing estate in Jobestown. So I was a fighter always, and when I drove to that fight, the fight stank off that night. I had already prepared in my head that I might get a broken leg here. Like that guy had taken out some top names with that same sequence that he had done there. And I remember being more anxious about being like, I took on a fight there that I could have been submitted in 30 seconds in front of my hometown. And not only that, I would have been submitted and they wouldn't have even known. Because people that don't know, all of a sudden a little scramble happens and then the fight's over and everybody's looking at each other going, what happened? What happened? And there's no replays. So everybody's just like, well, that was a letdown. And that would probably be the last thing that would be on their mind. So I knew all of that when I stepped in there. I remember leaving the house saying to my mum, listen, if we come back tonight, I'm probably going to have a broken leg if I lose. Don't be worried about it. And she was like, all right. And then there was a moment in that fight, and the one that I'm talking about, so I'm actually upside down, and he has my leg, and it's like a banana my leg is. And I remember saying to myself, my leg's going to break now. And I twist my knee in a certain way, and I actually thought my leg did break. If you look at it back, it kind of my leg twists in a certain way, but it was how it rotated. It broke at the hinge, and when my knee was not good after that fight either. But when I got out of that, as you said, putting my hands on him, I could feel his body just leaving. He had quit. I could tell, and I knew I just had to get guard then. And as I said, the submission level. He won Sampo World Championships and stuff like that as well. So at the time, leg locks were not a thing.
Yeah.
This was a game that it was actually around the same time that Alan Belcher fought
Rusamir.
Yeah. And he had done a webinar on it, and I remember I owe that man a point. I do because I was still aiming people towards his webinar that he done that time for full lock defense. Because the way he talks about fighting the grips and the rule system and the keychain of defense, because the keychain of attack is always talked about, and that's the real key to getting the submission. But the keychain to defense is another thing as well that you have to watch, and especially with footlocks. Because if you defend one way and then you go the other way, you're probably getting caught. You have to key it together. Looking back last week, Paolo Biao, is that how you say his name? I'm an Irish man speaking the English language. Forgive me.
Where at the Abu Dhabis?
Yeah, the ADC.
Yeah.
Yeah. So his leg, he's someone that I would look. I won't look up to, but I definitely watch him. I watch his mindset. He's here for a greater cause. He doesn't care about the money. He's not here for all the reasons why everyone else is here. He's kind of here, I won't say for the same reason I am, but kind of in a way. I was never in it for anything else other than creating a life and a legacy for my son. I knew the rest would come with it. But for him, he talks about pain last week, about saying, he has a post saying, my name is Pain, and I turn up when you least expect it. Not many people like me, but some people embrace me. And it's like a warrior's quote about pain. And to me, I remember thinking back to that fight and saying, do you know what, I'm just glad that in that moment I could have tapped and realised that I didn't have the stones to really be who I want to be, but I am who I am supposed to be, and I am who I accepted. Because to be someone to be on the same mindset as, I won't say as on the same mindset, but if you're willing to let your leg break to kind of for honour or something like that, in training you're in thick, but on the battlefield, to me, that's it. There's no way out.
Right.
Happen is the last kind of cause, and I want to die in there in a hypothetical way. I want to go out with my sword. And
Brilliant.
Awesome. So from fighting on local stages like that to the biggest stage in the world, getting into the UFC, what was that like for you? Was that kind of a dream come true, or just the next evolution for you?
I won't say the UFC wasn't my dream. Going as far as I could, and to me, the UFC is the top of the game. I don't think anywhere else is. If you sign for the UFC, it's like getting your PhD, and then anything after that is what you do with your PhD. So you get your PhD, and then maybe you go and walk in won championships or something like that after that. But to me, getting to the UFC is the true qualification. I was more panicking about an injury that I had at that time, and that's another part that's in my book as well. And at that time, I was worried about would the injury hold up rather than actually the fight going well. So when I had signed for the UFC, That was one of my big concerns. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about winning. It was about, can I hold up and get this injury? Because I knew that this injury was, if you had to give me $10 million and this injury back, I probably wouldn't have made it, you know. This injury was a back injury. It slipped a disc. I couldn't walk. It ruined my mindset. It ruined my masculinity. It ruined a lot of things that I think fighters understand, that when you can't be who you were supposed to be,
right,
you start withering away. You start dying, you know. So getting to the UFC was a huge part about testing that injury on the world stage, and then to be able to have the career that I had in there. Some people go into the UFC and they fight 10 fights and you never hear of them and you never see them. To me, I fought 5 times in the UFC and I made a very big splash. I'm proud to say that every time I get in there, it was like one of the best memes I've ever seen. Do you ever see that the little kid, he's rubbing his hands together? And it has, Paddy Holohan's fighting this weekend. It popped up the other day, it did, and I remember saying to myself, that's a perfect meme to describe an I'm fighting. Because they're like, is he going to win? It's like, I don't know, but it's going to be fucking great. And it's a full level show. So the other day I fought in a grappling competition, in a lightweight grappling competition.
I saw that against England, right?
Yeah, of course, Mick, and that's the only reason I jumped in.
Of course.
They were like, do you want to fight against England? Where? When? No, but so even walking out, I walked out to Celtic Symphony. Right now, in grappling, you know, grappling is kind of like, it's like the ballet in a way. Sometimes it's like MMA is for the council kids, and grappling is for the posher kids. You know,
yeah, the elite.
Especially when it comes, you know. Now, listen, I love grappling, but that's what it's kind of like. And when I walked in, it was like nearly like an MMA event in the theatre. The Celtic Symphony kicked in. Even the guy I was fighting was a kind of a really, really passive fight, a dangerous guard, and he pretended to lie back and stuff, and I pretended to flick a snot at him, and everyone laughed, and it was proper banter in a grappling match, and I was like, do you know what? It was probably very soon and very recent that I kind of realised, you know what? I have a charisma, entertainment factor to me, and maybe in the UFC that's what really went for me as well. That I wasn't putting her on. I was that person that was that fighter that people wanted to see, you know. Just laid it in there and didn't really give a shit about winning or losing. I gave a shit about perfection.
Well, I'm sure you got up for it being against the English. I told some of these guys once that when the Irish kickboxing team back in the day would fight the English, we didn't get a pep talk in the locker room. We got a history lesson from our coaches.
Yes.
And you'd go out there, you'd be ready to die, you know.
Absolutely. Like because it kind of brings us. We're in a mad situation at the moment, Mick. We really are over here. Like at the moment, this is probably the closest that we've ever been to United Ireland, and I can feel it in my bones. But the mad thing is, we don't have the same society as we had back in 1916. We don't have the same men and women. It's like everyone are distracted or something like that. But this is the time, and everyone's like, "Oh, we can't afford it." It's like, listen, mate, if you're talking about money, you should just live. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is more than money. This is the real correcting something from 800 years ago. So the idea that, like, yeah, well, this is England. If you just look at a map, it can't be England because there's a sea in between us. So at one stage, somebody came across that sea and took something that wasn't theirs. And we're all in a society now where we know that it's not right to take something that isn't yours.
Yeah.
And 2 kids are in a schoolyard and a bigger kid walks over and pulls something out of another kid's hand. And then a few days go by. Does that mean he owns it? Not really. So we're in a situation now over here where people need to be more educated on what's going on, because we don't hate English people. We don't. Like, my girlfriend's from Liverpool.
Yeah.
My son is half Liverpoolian. So people like, you're a hypocrite, they say to me, and they're like, why? And they're like, because you talk about English people, and then you are with English people, and it's like, you're just not very smart, are you, mate? You know, in a way that my problem is with people, countries, and other nations imposing their will on nations where they have no business to be opposing their will. They should not be in them nations, you know. So that's my problem with the British rule in Ireland, is that just because it's here for a long time, it still doesn't make it right.
Yeah.
I don't hate English people, but English people that think that, like we had someone the other day, this little woman, you should look this up, I swear. I would never hit an old woman, Mick, but I'm telling you, I came close to this one. This woman turned around and said, the Irish need to suck her up. They lost their land, and that was it. Now they do what we say.
Wow.
Well, you know, the problem with trying to decide a border is when that border is in someone else's country in the first place. That might give you some problems.
Yeah.
They call it the Irish border problem. It's not an Irish border, it's a British border in Ireland. And I'm wondering why. Yeah, but what would be the problem with that? I wonder, because we're in a situation now, Mick, where we've had the peace process for 20 years. So that's an international... it was a Bonnie... What's her name? Bonnie...
Oh, the ambassador?
Bonnie
Yeah, I can't remember her name.
But she, amazingly... It took an African woman, an African origin woman, to tell the English government that they were wrong. And do you know what? It was probably the best way that was ever put, Mick. I've never really heard it better, and hats off to her. I tweeted her as well. We owe her a point as well. But she put it the best way ever. So we're in a situation where 20 years ago, we had an international declaration of peace, a treaty that was made between Europe and England and Ireland. And now England are willing to break that and willing to risk the peace for profit. So 20 years ago, there's kids that were being born when that treaty was being signed. Now you have young men and women that are 20 years of age and that are going to get a border put into their country. You know nothing of this. That would be the equivalent of me turning up in your town, sticking a border on the road, putting Irish soldiers on it, and saying, right, down, this is a border. This used to be here hundreds of years ago. And you'll be like, no, what? I don't know anything about that. So this generation, they know nothing about what these are trying to do. And if I was a 20-year-old man and someone came into my country with a different flag and tried to put a border up, I'm having trouble with that, man.
So that kind of leads us into your passion for doing the right thing. Led you to a now career in politics. So, you know, when over here, I mean, we have a bit of a mess going on here too in the States, but you know, we have two parties, which isn't really democratic. You know, when you have this choice or this choice, and that's it.
I know.
So can you could you quick explain the political system in Ireland, how it exists right now, and then what your role is in as a politician?
Absolutely, Mick. So in 1922, the treaty was signed where the 6 counties were partitioned. So Mick Collins was sent to England to meet with Lloyd George, and he told him that you sign this treaty to sign these 6 counties away, or we will just come to Ireland because we're in the middle of World War and we will just plunder your land. That's the choice you get. So they were brought back and they were actually able to vote on it. You wouldn't even get a vote on it these days because democracy is dead. So the Irish people voted on it. So there was anti-treaties or pro-treaties. Now, Ireland had been at war for a long time, and a lot of people just did not want to go back to war. And the idea of being threatened by one of the most powerful countries in the world, well, far more powerful countries in the world, would to plunder your land, they voted for the treaty. So what happened is that Ireland got partitioned. So this broke up the parties as well. Sinn Féin would have been the party that was all of the rebels were kind of involved in at that time when they broke off. So it's the oldest party in Ireland, which would be the party that I am involved with. It's the Workers' Party. It's the People's Party, if you must. It's the party that look out for the marginalised and the disadvantaged and the working class and the businesses and the land and all of the stuff that's really important in nations. Then you have Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. So these parties came about, which they would have been the ruling party since probably about 1922. So Fianna Fáil is a party and Fine Gael is a party. But they're kind of like, they swap the sheep's clothing, if you must. So it's kind of the way you have two parties. We have got two parties, but they're the same party, and they just swap the power between each other. So for the last 100 years, we've been ruled by one of these as the leading party, and they would be in a coalition with somebody. And what they do is we've been led by people that are thinking about profit, people are thinking about economic growth rather than economic development. So the growth of development, or the growth means that they make more money. It could be, we don't know where that money's going, but the development means that the people will benefit from it, not necessarily when it's grown. So their focus is in the wrong place. So for 100 years, obviously the Sinn Féin were fighting for the people, and then when it came to the troubles in Northern Ireland, this is where the party of Sinn Féin kind of would have suffered its greatest blows, but would have been its greatest achievements as well, because we wouldn't be who we are. So in 1969, I think it was 69, there was a burning of Bombay Street. So if you have a look at this, it's on YouTube. It's on a few parts, and it's the burning of Bombay Street. And what happened was that loyalists that were up the north, so in the 6 counties that were partitioned in 1922. Sorry, I missed a bit in between that. After 22, the government got the Catholic Church to invest in the country because they were broke, and it was just after war. So the Catholic Church got good control of the schools, the land, everything, all the institutions. I don't know how the Catholic Church is over there, but over here it's a disgrace. They molested their way through. They beat children up. They hid bodies in places they shouldn't have been. They took control, kind of like nearly like a dictatorship, if you must. And they ruled the country. In the 80s, what happened is Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael opened the country up for investment from big countries, so for big companies. So the corporation tax over here is 12.5%, which was a huge incentive to bring these companies over. But at the time, the promise was that they wouldn't charge them tax, that they would bring them in, and this kind of saved them from the Catholic Church, if you must. And in the 80s, then you have all these people coming out, say Catholic institutions and stuff like that, and then they become alcoholics and they go on drugs, and people are like, how did they do that? It's kind of like the army veterans in the States in a way. It's like there's a reason these people are taking stuff that's altering, because they have pain.
Suffering trauma, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of the state caused a lot of these troubles, but then blame the people for being these people, if you must. So in the so as I said, in 69, then the burning of Bombay Street. So loyalist mobs who were up the north, which would have been, they would consider themselves British in Ireland. They were here during the plantations. They've been here for hundreds of years, and they have their own traditions. But they came into Catholic housing estates and pulled people out of their homes and set fire to their homes, and Dublin had to take in refugees from its own country, basically. So what happened was that people got together. People would know as the IRA, the Irish Republican Army. They got together to defend the communities. Not only were they fighting against, I have to move out here for a second. Were they fighting against the British, or the loyalist mobs, these mobs that were coming up? The British Army was supplying these mobs with guns and bombs and detonators. And now this is not hearsay. This is not me saying, oh yeah, this is what I think happened. This is what happened. Conclusion is what it was called. So it's been, in the last few weeks, it's been highly documented that the British government were supplying these militias to come in and take out these communities. And you're talking about innocent people here that weren't at war at the time. They were just trying to live their lives. So the people that stood up to them were called the IRA, which would have been the Irish Republican Army. And in other countries, they would be called, like most countries, that happen when the people stand up and fight back, they get called terrorists. It's very hard to be a terrorist in your own country fighting for your own land. Terrorism usually happens when you go to another country and cause terrorism. The real terrorism going on here was the most armed force on this land was the British Empire at this time. And after that, would have been the paramilitaries, which would have been the UVF and the other paramilitaries that would have been attacking Catholics and running Catholics out of jobs, and there was a large marginalisation against the Catholic communities up the north. It would have been kind of like what's going on in Palestine at the moment. That's why we know a lot about and we know what they're going through. So to me, Sinn Féin were the political side of the IRA at that time. Now, as that went on, there is a time for war and there is a time for peace. But Sinn Féin have got a horrible kind of all of the other parties would throw that up straight away. People would try not to, I won't say boycott Sinn Féin, but people that would be like uneducated and let's say the higher class, if you must, would vote for Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, even though they are still ramming this country. We have Leo Varadkar, who went over to meet with Boris Johnson to talk about this Brexit deal coming over. When I talked about Michael Collins going over to sign the treaty, he went over to sign a treaty, and when he signed that treaty, he said, I am signing my own debt warrant. He knew, he was brave enough to know that he had to make a sacrifice. That if he brought back that treaty to Ireland, that only one half was going to be happy and the other half wasn't, and eventually he would die because of that. And that's exactly what happened, Josh.
Right.
He ended up getting executed by the anti-treaty people, so nearly by his own people. Now, we had a leader then that was brave enough to understand that and recognise that. Now we have a leader over here who's a coward. This guy is an absolute coward. He's not elected in this country. He's the Taoiseach or the minister, if you must, by default. The other guy resigned, and he was a sack of shite as well. He had robbed and pillaged the country as well. But not only that, the guy that had robbed and pillaged the country got an award off the current leader for a Man of the Year award. You have these guys giving each other awards, like. So we have an unelected guy with Boris Johnson, who's another unelected guy, because making the biggest decision in Irish history, and the two of them are cowards. So I don't think we're going to end up. I think he's going to end up coming back with this bullshit. This is what's happening, and the border's not going up. He stood by saying that we'll never have a border, and I was actually shocked that we won't have the border again. Now that language is starting to change. That language is turning into, it won't be like a border, but it'll be kind of like a border. And then you have his other ministers, so you have guys that are failing in the health system, the housing system. We have 6 million people over here, and we have 10,000 people that are homeless. We have people that work, okay? They earn, say, 30 grand each a year, and they're living in a hotel because they cannot afford to live anywhere else. So our government has invested into hotels for our people. So they're called hubs. So what happens is the government own a lot of these hotels and a lot of these properties. They bought these properties when the country collapsed. If you were to rent, say your mother's house now, Mick, if you were to rent that house, it would be probably about €1,750. So €1,750 to rent that per month. Okay.
Shit, I might kick my mom out and rent it.
I would, man. You're making afford it. And what they did is they drove up the rents. They stopped building social housing. They stopped building the housing estates that me and Mick grew up in, that used to house people, the workers, used to house the factory workers, and all of this. So now we're in a situation where homelessness has pushed. They keep now it's getting worse every month. They say they have policies. Every single month homelessness goes up. Last night we had there's a homeless activist over here. His name, and he's kind of like me. He's elected as well, but he works. His homelessness is his ace. This is what he's good at. And last night there was a family that became homeless. So what happens is, say they fled a place that was had domestic violence or abuse or something like that, and they went Garda station for help. The Garda station gave them sleeping bags.
Police station.
To sleep on the streets. So Anthony had to go down at 12:05, and there's 5 kids in school uniforms. They have to go to school tomorrow. They're with their mother in a police station, and the police has given them sleeping bags to go and sleep on the streets with them. Wow. It's just normal now, Mick. Over here, it's the worst situation ever been in this country. And it's being created by Leo Varadkar and Owen Murphy. These are the ministers over here that they are tyrants that are worse than we've ever had. We've had 10 years of really, really bad leaders and government, and all that they've concentrated on is profit. Concentrated on looking after Apple and Google, and like our own government. They owe us, I think it's 64 billion or something like that. They owe us a mad amount of money, and our government, they tried to give it to us, and our government put an appeal in so they didn't have to give it to us. And the excuse will be, oh yeah, but if they take the money, that means they'll leave the country and all the jobs will be gone. So what should we do? Should we sing a national anthem to Google? Should we sing a national anthem to these countries? Like you see Donald Trump doing at the moment now. He doesn't threaten people with war anymore. He threatens them with economic destruction by pulling a company out. And that's our fault. It's our own fault for allowing these companies to come in and employ so many people that they can collapse their economies if that's the way. It's like a bully. And we have to stand up to these. And sometimes you stand to a bully, you get a dig in the mouth, and you'll suffer a little bit. Same way as if the jobs go, we'll suffer a little bit. But we won't be bullied anymore. We won't be in a situation where we have corporations looking and dealing with their country. They're the ones who make the laws now. Like, these guys are so out of touch with what it's like to be an actual citizen in this country that they need a good shaking. They do, you know. And hopefully very soon they get it in the by-election coming up. But if the same habits of the last 100 years that I've explained there, where people go in and vote for them anyway. They done the budget yesterday and they crippled everyone. They put carbon tax on. So we have a carbon tax now, okay? Have you got a carbon tax?
No.
Not yet.
So we pay for carbon, right? There's 6 million of us. China and India, right, have 34% of the planet. We have 0.1% of the population of the planet, and we pay carbon tax. China and India don't. Mm-hmm. How does this make sense? We're a few farmers in the Atlantic Ocean compared to these people, you know? And our government decided to come in and not give us a tax break on the renting, Mick. So say we should give a month's rent back to people when they pay 12 months rent. Give them a relief. Give working people a free doctor's visit, 2 free doctor's visits a year. It's €50 to go see your doctor, and then whatever it cost me €125 for the chest infection the other day. So we're in a situation where if the people keep voting for Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, this country will be no longer Ireland. This country will be a corporate country that is just like the Cayman Islands or something like that. Like the Cayman people, do we ever talk about them? No. Oh, you mentioned the Cayman Islands, people think about money, think about tax, think about banks, think about writing money off. And that's what Ireland is becoming. And what we really need in this is we need our Irish blood. We need the blood that's spread all over this world, all over this planet. That's what we need. We need them to stand up at the same time and stand up for Ireland and realise what's going on here. This is no longer the diddly-diddly old place. Ireland is suffering the biggest plundering that it has ever suffered. And it's not at the hands of the British, it's at the hands of the Irish government at the moment.
So you seem, really educated on all this stuff. Is this, politics and these subjects in general, is this something that you've been interested in all your life? Is it something that you stumbled on, more as an adult? What does that look like for you?
Politics is kind of my history, as Mick touched on there. So politics is our history. Unfortunately, the British are a huge part of that. Unfortunately, we're not a huge part of their history. We're the thorn in their side. We're the guys that never lay down, never rolled over. My grandfather lived around the corner from me, Josh, very close to my house. My grandfather was a smart man. My grandfather was part of the Irish Army at the time. Now he was a peacekeeper within the UN, so he was actually involved in the siege of Jabbaville, Mick. The Irish
in the Congo.
So my granddad he was in the 35th Battalion, and he was on the bridge. There was a colonel named Sergeant Quinlan, and he was the one who. So the Americans have studied this themselves. They fought. They ran out weapons. They ran out bullets, and they fought the opposing forces, and they were able to defend the fort that they had for without getting one death. So there was not one death. But Sergeant Quinlan was equipped. He had read many books on ancient war, on samurais, on all of this stuff. And my granddad told me how he used to talk about it. And when I used to go around to my grandfather's house, he used to teach me about this stuff. And he was the one who probably taught me my ethics and taught me how to be the Columbo in the room sometimes. You know, sometimes people think you're stupid because you're not saying anything, or because you're not loud, or because maybe you are loud sometimes, but I'm the cunning one, I'm the clever one in the room. I know what's going on. And I watch people. I watch what people do. I watch the behaviours. I watch how they treat other people. And then that usually tells you then when they start standing up and saying, I'm for this, I'm for that. That usually tells me that they're not, that they're liars, you know, that they are wolves in sheep's clothing, as we call them over here.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. So political wise, to me, I've always been pretty smart about understanding my history, and I'm not afraid that if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm not one of these like I'm infected by it where I can't even see past. Like, you see this Trump thing. If somebody comes out and says something bad about Trump, and Trump is he's at the kicking a little kid that day, they'll stand up and defend it. You know what I mean? In a way. So some people can't be wrong. They cannot be wrong. But to me, I change when the truth comes out. I change when the situations change. You know, and I change for the good. I want this place to be good for my children, for my sons. At this stage, if we were to again unite in Ireland, and it was in my history time, and I was on the right side of history, I didn't keep my hands in my pockets. We have lots of people that are just doing nothing, absolutely nothing. That's nothing to do with me. That's a lot to do with you. That's more to do with you than you'll ever know. Because if you haul the Irish flag over your head, if you cheer on with that Irishness, then this definitely has something to do with you. Our country is in the greatest problems that it's ever been in, and the world doesn't even know it. That's the greatest kind of trick, is that it looks like everything's going great.
So there's a lot of people over here obviously passionate about politics. But the thing that you see over here is most people, think 140 characters on Twitter or posting something on Facebook is enough to actually get something done. You take a step further, and you actually get involved, not only just with politics, but, with the youth. Tell us a little bit about your work with the youth.
So, because what a lot, and to me, as I say, I'm a worker, you know what I mean? You're dead right about this Facebook thing. A lot of people talk a lot of shit on Facebook, and it does my head in. And not only that, as I said, people will pose as these people that will, I'm for this, I'm for that, when they're not really. And you'll see that. So my key is to give tools to the youth, is to educate the youth to try and see this stuff, to see that sometimes the people that are around you, they're only around you because you're doing well at that time, or they're only doing well at you because you benefit their
agenda,
their agenda at that time. Good word, yeah, Mick. So you benefit their agenda at that time, and as soon that agenda is kind of achieved, or that you're not able to benefit that agenda anymore, that then people disappear, and they're not the people that you want to be around. You want to be around people that are going to be in the trenches with you no matter what happens. So what I do with the youth is, I try to get rid of this classism. Okay, so me, I'm from as I said, a social housing estate, council estate. To say the kids over this side of the city today, I'm over here. We're over in Blackrock and Foxrock and Dundrum, and houses out here would be worth millions of euros. Mick will give you an example of where this would be compared to where you are.
Yeah, I mean, it's very posh.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we still do have in Ireland, there's still a definite class system, especially certain areas, you just know, like, usually if a guy like Paddy or I were in Dundrum or Blackrock, it was because we were delivering a package. We didn't live there.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's the situation. So what I'm trying to do is, I am one of them people that these people would when I walk in, they chimp in their head straight away. It's like, this guy is dangerous. This guy is, everything about me tells them. And then I sit down and I tell them things, and I change the whole view on what they should be looking at, and who they should be thinking about, and what I am and who they are. And I try to break down the barrier so they can see that. You know what? I say to them, you are being brainwashed for someone else's agenda, which is, at the moment, which would be, over this side of the city, would be a Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, like a vote to keep control, for the power, to keep the money in the landlord's pockets, to keep the rents going up, because these children's mother and fathers as well probably own 3 or 4 houses, and they rent them to people like me and Mick and other people, you know what I mean, in a way, and yourselves probably. And so they're making a fortune off this, so they will always vote for the agenda. They don't give a shit about the people in the Garda station last night. They might see that and they'll pass that piece in the paper, and then their day goes on. So what I'm trying to educate is that maybe I can get to a mind or two over here that they can start educating their people. Maybe I'll get one guy that'll his mind will switch, and he'll go, do you know what? And he'll stand up for equality, true equality. Because we talk about equality over here, we had the referendum for same-sex marriage, which I voted yes for. I'm all about you do what you want with your body, you know. You do whatever you need to do with your body. I'm not going to have any say in that. So if we can get a situation where we get true equality, is no classism either. You know, we have all of this stuff of gender, all different genders and stuff like that, and everybody standing up saying they want to be counted and stuff like that. Well, I want the people to be counted in my housing estate. I want them kids last night that had to probably run away from a domestic situation and have nowhere to go. I want them to have a house to go to. I want them to have a unit that's set up for these kids and these people, because that's true equality. Because we have churches and we have nightclubs set up for different sexes, and for gay nightclubs and straight nightclubs, and I'm all for that. I've lots of gay friends and stuff like that as well, and they're really cool guys, always full of energy, always full of charisma, and I love being around that energy. But we have specific places for specific qualities, but we don't have housing for people that are probably fleeing a domestic situation. There's no equality there. That's it's a mirage in a way. If there was a real equality in a country, the equality would be that everything equals itself out in a way, you know. But it's easy to run down the projects or the council housing estates and make them worse, because if you make them really, really, really bad, sure, they're just animals, they're just different people. But if I was born in Blackrock or Dundrum, would I be the person I am today? I don't think so. I don't think I would have. You need the guy that has been through the system to navigate the system. And sometimes even the people that don't even know the system, they need to listen to that person. And I feel on the ground here in Ireland, I am that person. Now, I don't know it all. I'm not a black belt in this. I don't know everything about the economy and the economics. And there's no doubt some big fat cat will sit there someday and he'll talk about what he's really good at, and he'll probably make me seem silly. But then I'll start talking about jiu-jitsu or something like that, and I'll make him seem silly. Yeah. Because that's how this stuff works.
So how far do you want to take this political career?
I want to be the president, Mick.
I knew you'd say that.
I swear. And the mad thing is, if you looked at me as a child, when people read my book and they say, do you know what? If that little mad fucker can do that from there, being president is easy then. You know, in a way, I'm 31 years of age, so I'm not even eligible to be president. You have to be 35. Now, Michael D is doing a good job over there, but imagine me standing in a different country and talking about this, talking like this to all the other ministers, to talking to the way the people of the country actually speak.
That might rattle the establishment a little bit, huh?
There we go.
They'd be shitting their pants.
They'd be shiting themselves, Mick. So if a vote comes along, if this situation comes along, I'm in a position there where I could possibly run for president. I could be the first single parent kid rise up out somewhere and become a president. And the idea would be over here that if Donald Trump can be president, Donald Duck can be president. That's the way I look at it. We have a guy here that, like Donald Trump say, he said he was going to be president because he wanted to get higher up on The Apprentice, because, am I right in saying, was it Piper or something at the time was getting paid more than him. Somebody was getting paid more than him. And he said that he was going to pretend to be president. So the channel that was on would see him as a better option and it'd pay him more. And then it turned out that it wasn't such a joke when he seen the reaction. It was kind of like saying something without saying something. And then he got the answer that he wanted. And he went on to be president. So I don't know what's going on there, but I know for a fact that if over here we have a situation where the people that won't say Michael Diaz shouldn't be president because he's a good president. He really is. He looks the part as well. He does. He looks like a leprechaun.
And he's a smart man too.
He's a smart man. No, he really is, and he fought for the country for a long time. But he is getting older, and that's just the way it works. You know what I mean? And in 5 years' time, he's going to be older again, and I'm going to be eligible. And we had a guy here that came out and talked about like the travelling community. Peter Casey, his name was, and he said about like he was kind of really racist, publicly really racist during the last presidential election. He came second. Yeah, and before he became racist, he was nowhere in that race. He was going nowhere. So I won't say you have to say the right things over here, but I feel that if I stood up beside all of them other guys and I spoke the way I'm speaking, they have all these agendas and people that they have to make happy, and you can't say this and you can't say that. I'll just stand there and I'll speak my mind and I'll tell them things that they couldn't walk a mile in my shoes. They couldn't walk a few meters in my shoes. They couldn't stand backstage and know what it's like to feel real fear, real consequences, an elbow to your face being the consequences, you know, and then the consequences of other stuff that I've been through in my life. They don't know nothing about this. They are generations of privileged people.
Well, you know, pressure makes diamonds.
Absolutely. We've been under pressure for a while, like 800 years of it.
Yes, for sure.
Well, we want to be respectful of your time. We're starting to run out. I do want to talk a little bit about your book coming out soon. Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the book is something I've always wanted to do. And the mad thing is, I've been collecting stuff for years and years in the shoebox. And some of the stuff that I pulled out of this, like I had like newspaper clippings of like when I was a kid and photographs from then. And I went up to the box I did to take out the box last week or a few weeks ago when we were doing the pictures part. And it was mental. I kind of got a little bit emotional again because I was thinking, Paddy, how did you think of this stuff? Like, I didn't think of this stuff like it was actually going to happen, but I was doing it. And I was going to actually go up and collect the stuff out of it that I put in there over the last 10 years to bring it off to the book place and for them to put it in a book. So I'm the first Irish MMA fighter to release a book. There's been many fighters that have released books, but this one is about me. This one is about the actual journey of what it takes. So I'm the first person to actually tell the story of what it really takes to become a fighter. And not only that, but there's a lot of perceptions in between that people would have thought that a lot of this was given to us. Like people would thought that John would have handed a lot of this stuff to me. Now, no doubt he was a huge part of the story, but I did a lot of this on my own as well. And there was times where I was in the trenches and I was on my own in there, where people would obviously give the credit you must to people around you. Where sometimes I found myself deep in them trenches on my own. And not only that, the road as a kid to get to where I am, it tells you who I am now. There was I went through a lot of tragedies as a kid, and then even approaching fighting the UFC all the way up till I was an adult. Till I signed to the UFC, my life was a constant struggle. Like sometimes it was just like I didn't know how I was going to get out of them darknesses, and then like with death, there's a lot of death in there as well, and I witnessed a lot of death growing up as well, and it was just one of these things. When I grew up, I spent a lot of time in West Belfast in Lanadown, which would be a heavy estate to be living in as a kid. You would see men with guns on the streets, and you would see two types of men with guns on the streets. One's trying to kind of oppose you, and they would call you tags or Catholic scum or Fenian bastards and stuff like that. And then you would have other people that would be good men that would be protecting you from these people, but they would be as what the world would paint them as would be terrorists. But these people would be essential in my community when I was growing up because they protected us. There was times where there was curfews where we knew we had to stay in the house on the 12th of July and stuff like that, because there's a good chance you You can get dragged off and shot somewhere as a kid, and no one would give a shit, Josh. There was kids that were killed by in shootouts, bullets coming through walls, hitting kids in the eyes and the faces and stuff like that, and women being blinded by plastic bullets shot through their windows and stuff. And like, I mean, this is all like, it's only all starting to come out now because the files are getting released. If people go onto YouTube now and have a look at the troubles in Northern Ireland, have a look at the Battle of Bombay Street, as I said at the start, you will be absolutely shocked. Have a look at a program called No Stone Unturned, which is about a group of UVF guys being given guns by the British Army, going in when remember Ray Houghton scored that goal?
Yeah.
Against England. 5 minutes after that, UVF men went into a bar and they shot 6 people dead. They went there with an AK-47 and they slaughtered them on an island. Right? I think it was called Island Town or Long Island, or can't remember the name. But this, you would have, at the time, you would have heard of it, Mick. But it was buried at the time. But now they've done a documentary on it, and you'll see that the British government were in conclusion with these people. They gave these people these guns to go and kill Catholics, kill Irish people in Ireland. But we were the terrorists in a way. The people who fought back were the terrorists, if you must. So, to me, growing up was a huge part of who I am today, and going in and fighting in a cage is not as much as a lot of other stuff that I've kind of been through or seen.
Well, I'll try to find links to those documentaries and put them in our show notes.
We'll put them on the show notes.
Will your book be on Amazon? Will we be able to get it here in the States?
Yeah, so I think you can actually pre-book it already on Essence. So there's a website called Essence, and you can it's up for pre-sale. Now, it was sold out from the pre-sale. Now I think it's back in already, and you'll be able to get it on Amazon and all of the good book companies. I don't know how the book companies go.
Okay,
but
yeah, we actually feature a book every week on our podcast, so we're gonna feature your book for this episode, and I'm looking forward to getting to myself and reading it. I'm really interested.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it. It really is a cool story, and it's a really cool story. That's all I can say. I don't want to give too much of it away.
Well, just from talking to you today, I'm sure it won't be boring. That's for sure. Well, we are running out of time. We want to let you get going, but where can people find you online if they're interested in learning more?
You can find me on Instagram. You can find my own podcast, the No Shame podcast, which is, you can find this on YouTube. You can find it on any good podcast sites. Paddy Holohan's No Shame podcast, and a lot of the stuff of I get ministers, and I had environmentalists on last week that 2 Irish guys that 100% proof, they said that climate change.
Yeah,
is
the
not
Conleys,
real.
the Conley family.
The Conleys,
I watched that. Yeah,
fired out that, wasn't it?
Very good.
Now. Absolutely. And then I had a girl on before, Lynn Boylan, which is pro climate change, and so I mix it up a little bit. So my own podcast is interesting. We're coming up to episode 100 now as well. So we've been consecutively going for 2 years plus now nearly. So yeah, so with that, you catch me on social media, and yeah.
Well, I'll just go on record here saying that, obviously I've known the warrior part of you in the cage, but I think Paddy's new calling now is he's a social warrior, looking for justice and looking for a better version of Ireland to raise his kids in. So more power to you, buddy.
For us all, for all of us, unionists, nationalists, for all of us to be together, not just one. Let's get rid of this trouble once and for all.
I hear you.
No better words to end on. So thank you so much for coming on our show, and I'm really looking forward to getting this out for the people to listen to.
Pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure to see you. Pleasure to meet you, Rush. Pleasure to see you again.
Nice to meet you, yeah.
All right, buddy. Cheers, pal.
You have a gem with this man. You have a gem with this man over there. You're very lucky.
Oh, yeah. I understand.
Cheers, buddy. I'll talk to you soon, all right?
Cheers, Mick. Look after yourself, mate.
See ya. Bye.
Back to Jobstown with me.
Good luck.